It's Friday night, and I thought I would make one more video on a subject that I saw posted the other day, and it was therapists asking if they think 12-step meetings could be beneficial, or would it damage the person if they do the meetings in therapy, and so I thought there's probably a lot I would like to fit into this video, so I'm going to try and keep it simple. If somebody meets the criteria of addiction, so if they're compulsive, if they have impaired control, that when they start they can't guarantee when they're going to stop, that there is like continued use in spite of consequences, and the consequences are growing, and that there is craving, the phenomenon of craving, which has withdrawal and tolerance conditions to it, that I think is best summed up by the American Medical Association's definition of addiction, that it is a brain disorder of well, they say it is a brain disease of the motivational and reward and memory circuitry. If you've got that, then you're going to need a major intervention. And as the ACE study has shown, the adverse childhood experience has shown, and a lot of the clinicians of our day that have linked childhood trauma to the way that we diagnose personality disorders, mental health conditions, and addiction issues, that it is never a freestanding disorder. Where 12-step fellowships come into it is that they can be, I just think, an essential addition to someone's recovery program. I had a fellow once come to me for sex addiction, and his therapist even got him working the 12 steps, but he said, don't go to SLAA, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous, because it's toxic. And so I will speak to the toxicity too. I love Pia Melody's model of reality, that they're body, thinking, feelings, and behavior. And I love that in modern therapy now that we are talking really holistically about treating the whole person, especially the decade there of the brain in the 2000s, where we got all the information about the triune brain, and CBT working from the top of the brain down, and somatic therapies working from the bottom of the brain up, and these two worlds are coming together more and more and more. There's lots of traditional talk therapists being trained in midbrain techniques, and there's lots of bodywork therapists being trained in counseling techniques, and we're seeing a lot more of the community come together. Now, I'm a therapist and I'm a recovering person, so that's my disclaimer. They're my biases. That I've done 3 12-step meetings this week. I've made phone calls every day. I pray in the morning and I pray at night, and I pray throughout the day. I work a program. This morning I was finishing off writing for my sponsor, to whom I meet generally once a week on Skype. He's in California, and I leave a message for him every day. But I also work in private practice. I have a multitude of addictions. My claims are I'm a recovering codependent, a drug addict, go to Narcotics Anonymous, overeater, and sex and love addict, and identifies as a sex and avoidant addict. And I'm 32 years clean, or been in program for 32 years, but I've been, in and out of struggles with other addictions, including workaholism. That's why I work for myself now. That's why, old photos of me are in suits and ties, but I don't have to wear a suit and tie anymore. Dungarees are my comfort wear. I figure that if a client may as well meet me how I am, and in an hour's time they're going to know if I'm going to be any good for you or not. But therapy lasts for about an hour. And sure, you can give people interventions and they take them home, but we've got enough research now to tell us that clients are more likely to do something you do with them in the room rather than when they go home, than to follow an instruction. Now, I might see a client 2 or 3 times a week. I might say ring them and leave a message for extra support, but I'm not available. And believe me, if you've got an addiction, if you meet the criteria of addiction, I don't know about people out there. If you're listening to this, I'm probably going to speak to a small amount of people. But I'll just tell you what I needed. Man, when they told me in detox I had to do 90 meetings in 90 days, I thought, you're insane. How do you even fit that in? That's mental. But when I got home, and this is, I just wasn't the sharpest axe in the shed. When I got home and got up the next day, I wondered what the hell I was going to do all day. Because all I did do all day was use drugs. If you've got an addiction that has core beliefs that are constructed, that there's something fundamentally wrong with you, impaired thinking that gives you permission to do it, preoccupative thoughts that go into obsession and euphoric recall and fantasy, that lead to all sorts of rituals, man, you can spend a lot of your day just not using, but not being well, let alone acting out, feeling bad, going into guilt and shame and creating more consequences. So what I found for me, if I'm working with a client that's got developmental trauma, that has got a lot of cognitive distortions and defenses, a lot of repressed or explosive feeling matter, and a lot of unhealthy behaviors, then it's got to be a holistic approach. We've got to identify the addictions first, because change is behavioral. If we don't intervene on the addictions, we're never going to get to the underlying issues. Setting up a program of recovery that gives somebody genuine and realistic alternatives. 12-step meetings can be available to people for support. Russell Brand's book Recovery was a really wonderful example and a real big invitation to modern society that if you are struggling, come on in, find a place for you, and if there isn't one, invent it. Get courageous. So how I can explain this works for me. I have a therapist, I see her once a week. She's an attachment clinical psychologist, and it's really, these days, works on my trauma. When I was in the States, I did work on neurofeedback, brain spotting, sensory motor psychotherapy, and some trauma-focused yoga. And after I finished with my clin psych around the attachment conversational model, attachment theory stuff, I'm going to go back into using body-focused work, either the work of Kathy Kane or Pat Ogden, so body work. I do regular daily exercise and stretching. I try and get good sleep and hygiene, and that includes a meditation I do each day, and look at my diet. And that's always been my Achilles heel. But healthy food, reasonable exercise, good rest. If you don't have those, you're really pushing shit uphill to start with, because you're just disturbing your brain, putting it into an agitated state. But if you go to 12-step fellowships, on the wall you're going to see the halts. Don't get too angry, lonely, tired, or serious, or sad or serious. And as a warning to folks to eat, to hydrate, to rest. These things are already there in the culture on a daily basis. So if you have a client, you're doing brain spotting with them, or you're doing tapping therapy with them, or you're doing sensory motor psychotherapy with them, and it's bringing up their vulnerability, and you're starting to address the way that they've supported themselves and challenge those old sort of behaviors that might have stronger consequences than they want, replace them with new ones, then I would absolutely say don't be afraid of sending someone to a 12-step meeting. And if you've never been to one, why? Why haven't you gone? You don't have to be an addict to go. They're open meetings. Go and check it out. When I was a program director at a hospital here in Australia, I would get people to go to meetings. Everybody, from the receptionist to the CEO. If you haven't been, go. And the first thing someone would say is, oh my God, what would happen if someone saw me? And I say, already you've got more empathy with your client. Already you know now that what some of the things they're going to go through, because you should be able to explain that to them. Oh my God. See, even if you're not an addict and you're working with clients and they said that, you can say, God, you know what? I'm not as an addict, but I went to a meeting just to get the experience, and an open meeting, and wow, I really know what that feeling was, and this is how I got through it. You can already have more empathy, and you can go and you can listen and you can learn. And the tool, you don't have to replace a sponsor, but it's good to have some fundamental knowledge to be able to talk to your clients. And I'm amazed at how many therapists have never been, don't send clients, don't know about the resource, or they've got some bumper sticker rejection of it, and if you really get into it, there's no real basis for it. The main stuff, it's too religious, it's got God in it, and whatever. I've seen more atheists get well in Narcotics Anonymous than anywhere else in the world, and I must say there's more people that sort of probably don't believe in God that do. You know, it's amazing. So it's the whole God thing. I've seen people get round. It might not be for everybody, but I suppose what I'm petitioning is that I would say let your client make that decision, not you. And if you've already made that decision, I would support you to look at why. Have you gone? Have you looked at the literature? Have you had the experience of being? You know, I've taken colleagues to big opening meetings at conventions where you can be quite anonymous and just sort of soak in the atmosphere and see what you think. But I think putting somebody into that 12 step, it's always going to be a challenge. You're always going to be afraid to go. The walking towards any change is hard for any client, including doing a session one-on-one with you. Just learning to trust you is going to be re-traumatizing for them because they've been hurt by people they trusted largely. But going to a place where people are looking at other people's faces that are welcoming, largely the spirit of the place is it's welcoming. How are you? Welcome. Keep coming back. Just that sort of the way that people's faces, eye contact. I just think there's so much shame reduction happens in the softening of the nervous system if people go regularly that they get more comfortable than they think. It's very common to get physical hugs in 12-step meetings where appropriate, sometimes not in SLAM meetings, but AA, NA, Gamblers Anonymous, Debtors Anonymous, where you give someone a hug. Man, I tell you, hugs are, there's so much good literature and research on physical touch and appropriate physical touch. You get to empower your thinking with all sorts of tips and tools, everything from bumper sticker slogans to chapter and verse. So you get a lot of good information that people can start to challenge those cognitive distortions and core beliefs and defenses with thought processes that are much more empowering. The steps themselves, the meetings themselves are very encouraging of feeling. They'll people crying from the floor, it's okay. You get a hug at the end of it and people will clap and welcome you to keep coming back. It's a place where many people learn to feel. Generally, this day and age, it is really acceptable that people go to 12-step meetings and go to therapy. It can work hand in hand, and I just think it's a huge asset. I feel a lot of relief when I know that a client is leaving their weekly session or their group session with me, and they've got WhatsApp groups that they're part of that they can reach out, anyone available for a call, I'm having a rough time. They've got 12-step numbers of phones they can ring at any time. They've got a sponsor they can ring regularly and they're working a daily program. They've got literature they're reading, they're journaling, they're part of a steps group. I just feel so much better that person has been able to embrace a whole sort of gamut of support before they come back and see me. And change is largely behavioural. That if we can continue to what we focus on is what we're going to create, and that sort of wheel of awareness that Dan Siegel talks about. So anyway, there's so much I have probably left out, skipped over. There's things around that I will say. 12-step fellowships exist in the world that we live in, and so you've got to use due diligence. You can go to your local synagogue or church. You can go to your local library. You can go to your local scout hall and come across somebody who's not got your best interests in mind. So when you go to a 12-step fellowship, it's good to prepare clients that, staying out of a relationship, watch out for people that might want to take advantage of their vulnerability. These things happen everywhere in the world, and we have to watch out for ourselves. So please teach your clients good safety and good boundaries so they can look after themselves. But that isn't the spirit of 12-step fellowships, just like it's not the spirit of religion or the spirit of education or the spirit of the scouting movement. So teach due diligence and certainly support clients to reach out and create as much support as they can, and at least experience the fellowship before they make a decision that it's not for them, and certainly don't make a decision that it's not for them based on your bias if you haven't sort of made your own conclusions due to your own inquiry. So this is for Movember. It's around about recovery, and it's around about the value of 12-step fellowships and what they can add to the therapeutic process if you're working as a professional. Please, all I'm asking, look it up, because you could be robbing your clients of a great resource. Be gentle with your heart. Donate to Movember. The mustache of mine's coming along, and I look forward to making another video tomorrow. Bye-bye.